You think you know the story of Frozen, you know the two sisters, the kingdom of ice, the talking snowman, and the soaring ballad of self-acceptance. You have been told a story about magical powers, sisterly love, and the triumph of good over a conveniently misunderstood evil. That story is a lie. It is a beautiful, glittering, commercially perfect lie, engineered to soothe and to sell. But beneath the pristine animation and the billion-dollar soundtrack lies a carcass, the bones of a much older, stranger, and infinitely more terrifying story. A story that Disney did not just adapt, but actively dismembered. A story they gutted, sanitized, and buried under a mountain of focus-grouped pleasantries. The original tale, Hans Christian Andersen's The Snow Queen, is not a children's story. It is a harrowing psychological thriller. It is a grim Christian allegory. It is a survivor's testimony from the brutal, disease-ridden, class-stratified world of 19th century Europe. And at its heart, it is not a story about magic. It is a story about a demonic infection. It begins not with a charming royal family, but with the devil himself. It starts with a crime against reality, a cosmic act of vandalism that poisons the very fabric of human perception. Once you understand the significance of the Devil's Looking Glass, you will realize the story was never about a queen who could control ice. It was about a universe where evil is a tangible substance, a microscopic shard that can lodge in your heart and turn you into a monster. Once you understand the true nature of the Snow Queen's palace, you will see it is not a castle, but a morgue for the souls of the damned. And once you witness the grueling, terrifying journey of the original hero, a little girl named Gerda, you will understand that this was never a story about letting it go. It was a story about holding on, with bleeding fingers and a broken heart, in a world designed to freeze you solid. This is the truth they never wanted you to know. The story of the Snow Queen is a coded message, an instruction manual for navigating a world of profound trauma, systemic abuse, and spiritual warfare. It is not a fairy tale. It is a field guide to hell. And the journey begins, as all true horror stories do, with a broken mirror. Forget the accidental blast of ice from a troubled princess's hands. That is a modern invention, a therapeutic narrative for a comfortable age. The original story offers no such comfort. The evil is not accidental, it is deliberate, it is engineered. Hans Christian Andersen opens his tale in a place Disney would never dare to tread, in the school of the devil. He describes this place with chilling specificity. It was a place where a very particular artifact was forged, a mirror. But this was no ordinary mirror. It had a terrible, magical property. As Andersen wrote, everything good and beautiful that was reflected in it seemed to shrink and shrivel up, while everything that was worthless and ugly became conspicuous and looked even worse. A beautiful landscape, reflected in this mirror, would look like boiled spinach. The most virtuous people would appear hideous, their motives twisted into grotesque parodies. A good thought, entering the mind of someone looking into this mirror, would contort into a grimace. This was not just a tool of vanity, it was a weapon of mass perception, a device for ontological warfare. The devil and his students, whom Andersen calls his disciples, were delighted. They ran about the earth with this mirror, holding it up to everything and everyone, laughing as the world dissolved into ugliness before their eyes. But their ambition grew. They wanted more. They decided to fly up to heaven itself, to hold the mirror up to the angels and to God, to mock the divine. And this is where the catastrophe happens. As they flew higher and higher, the mirror, grinning with reflected malice, began to shake. It trembled so violently in their grasp that it slipped and fell. It plunged towards the earth and shattered. It broke not into a few pieces, but into hundreds of millions, billions of fragments. Some were as large as a window pane, others were no bigger than a grain of sand. And these fragments, Anderson tells us, caused even more misery than the mirror had whole. For these shards were scattered by the winds across the entire globe. They blew into the eyes of men and women, rich and poor, young and old. And if a sliver of that demonic glass entered a person's eye, they were cursed. They would forever after see the world as the mirror saw it, twisted, ugly, and worthless. But worse, far worse, were the splinters that were so small they became airborne dust. These fragments could be inhaled. They could find their way into the bloodstream, and some of them found their way into the human heart. If a shard of the devil's mirror lodged in your heart, Anderson writes, a terrible thing happened. Your heart would become a lump of ice. Love, compassion, empathy, joy, all of it, frozen, dead, replaced by a cold, hard, unfeeling logic. This is the inciting incident of the Snow Queen, not a misunderstanding, not a family secret, a global pandemic of spiritual poison unleashed by the devil himself. Every character in the story lives under this threat. Every person on Anderson's earth is just one unlucky breath away from having their soul frozen solid. This is the world we are entering. Not the cheerful, brightly coloured Arendelle. Picture instead the Copenhagen of the 1840s, a city of stark, brutal contrasts. Imagine walking its cobbled streets not as a tourist, but as Hans Christian Andersen himself. You have to understand the context here. Andersen was not writing in a vacuum. He was a man born into abject poverty, the son of a shoemaker and a washerwoman who clawed his way into the literary salons of the elite. He was forever an outsider looking in, acutely aware of the chasm between the polished facade of society and the grim reality festering just beneath it. The 1840s in Denmark were part of the Biedermeier period. For the bourgeoisie, this was an age of domestic tranquility, of sentimental art, of focusing on the family and the home as a sanctuary from the turbulent outside world. They filled their drawing rooms with polished furniture, delicate porcelain, and embroidered samplers. But outside those drawing rooms, the world was anything but tranquil. Industrialization was beginning to choke the cities with coal smoke and filth. The gap between the rich and the poor was a canyon. Cholera and tuberculosis were rampant, stalking the cramped, unhygienic tenements where the vast majority of the population lived. Child mortality was appallingly high. For a child like Andersen had been, life was precarious. It was a daily struggle against hunger, disease, and the crushing indifference of the class system. This is the reality that informs the devil's mirror. The mirror is not just a fantasy object. It is a metaphor for the profound cynicism and despair that Andersen saw consuming his world. It is the lens of poverty that makes the rich man's feast look like a mockery. It is the lens of grief that makes a sunny day feel like an insult. It is the lens of social anxiety that twists a polite smile into a sneer of contempt. Andersen is telling us that evil is not a grand, abstract concept. It is a splinter, a tiny, insidious thing that gets inside you and changes how you see everything. It is a psychological parasite. Now, let's meet our protagonists, not Anna and Elsa. Their names are Kay and Gerda. They are not royalty. They are poor children living in attic rooms in a crowded city. Their families are so poor they cannot afford a garden, so they grow vegetables in large boxes on the rooftop gutter that runs between their two homes. They are not sisters. They are, as Andersen describes them, not brother and sister, but they loved each other just as much as if they had been. They are the image of perfect, innocent childhood love. Their rooftop garden, with its roses and runner beans, is a tiny Eden suspended above the squalor of the city streets. It is a fragile paradise, and it is about to be shattered. One winter's day, Kay and Gerda are looking at a picture book. Kay, looking out the window at the falling snow, makes a casual remark to his grandmother. He says the snowflakes look like a swarm of white bees. His grandmother, indulging him, adds a piece of folklore. She tells him that the white bees have a queen, the Snow Queen. She is the largest of them all, and she can never rest upon the earth but flies back up to the black clouds. At night, she flies through the city streets, an ethereal, terrifying figure peering into windows, and when she does, the windows frost over with beautiful, intricate patterns, like ice flowers. Kay, with the bravado of a small boy, declares, "Let her come! I'll put her on the hot stove and then she'll melt." It is a childish boast, but in Andersen's world, words have power, and a challenge has been issued. Later that evening, Kay is looking out the window again. He sees a snowflake land on the edge of the rooftop garden box. It grows larger and larger until it takes the shape of a woman. She is, Andersen writes, dazzlingly white, but she was alive. Her eyes glittered like two bright stars, but there was no peace or rest in them. This is the Snow Queen. She is not a misunderstood goth princess. She is an elemental force, a being of terrifying, inhuman beauty. She beckons to Kay. He is frightened and pulls away from the window. The vision is gone. But the encounter has marked him. Sometime later, the real disaster strikes. He and Gerda are sitting on their little stools in the rooftop garden, looking at their picture book. Suddenly, Kay cries out, "Oh, something pricked my heart, and now something has flown into my eye." Gerda rushes to him, but she can see nothing. Kay insists he felt it, but then dismisses it. "It's gone now," he says. But it is not gone. He does not know it, but he has just become a casualty of the devil's war on reality. A microscopic shard of the cursed mirror has flown into his eye, and a tiny needle-like splinter has pierced his chest and lodged in his heart. The transformation is not instantaneous. It is insidious. It is the slow, creeping horror of watching someone you love turn into a stranger before your very eyes. This is the first element we must isolate: Kay's corruption. Disney replaced this with a single dramatic moment. Anna is struck in the head, then the heart, by a blast of ice magic. It is an external attack, a clear cause and effect. Andersen's version is far more terrifying because it is internal. It mimics the horrifyingly real experience of watching a loved one succumb to something you cannot see or fight. Mental illness, addiction, the slow poison of a toxic ideology, or the simple, brutal transition from childhood innocence to the cynicism of adolescence. The shard in Kay's eye begins to work. He looks at the beautiful roses in their garden, the very symbol of his and Gerda's love. Before, they were the most beautiful things in the world to him. Now, he sees them through the devil's lens. "Ugh," he says, breaking one off. "Look, this one's all worm-eaten, and this one's crooked. They're ugly roses, just like the boxes they grow in." He kicks the boxes and tears off the remaining roses. Gerda cries, horrified. When she tries to show him their picture book, he scoffs. "That's for babies," he says. He begins to mimic the adults in the street, their limps, their funny hats, their frailties. He does it with a cruel, startling accuracy. The neighbours are amused. "That boy has a remarkable head on his shoulders," they say. But Gerda is heartbroken. This is not her Kay. The splinter in his heart is also doing its work. It is turning to ice. His love for Gerda, his capacity for joy, his empathy, all of it is freezing over. He becomes cold, distant, and cruel. He is obsessed now with a different kind of beauty, the cold, sterile, geometric perfection of snowflakes. He looks at them through a magnifying glass, marvelling at their intricate patterns. They are much more beautiful than real flowers, he tells Gerda. There is not a single flaw in them. They are perfect, if only they didn't melt. This is a profound philosophical statement. Kay has rejected the messy, imperfect, organic beauty of life, the roses, in favour of the cold, flawless but lifeless beauty of abstract reason, the snowflakes. The heart of a boy is being replaced by the mind of a calculating machine. Think about the historical connection here. The 19th century was the great age of scientific rationalism and industrial logic. It was an era that celebrated the power of the human intellect to dissect, categorize, and control the natural world. Anderson, a romantic at heart, was deeply suspicious of this trend. He feared that a world governed purely by logic and reason, a world that celebrated the flawless snowflake over the worm-eaten rose, would be a world without compassion, a world with a heart of ice. Kay's transformation is an allegory for this societal shift. He has been infected by the spirit of the age, a cold, critical, analytical mindset that dissects beauty until it is dead. Let us illustrate this with an anecdote, a scene from Andersen's world. Imagine a man named Søren Kierkegaard, Andersen's contemporary and a fellow resident of Copenhagen, walking through the city. He is a philosopher wrestling with faith and existence. He sees a crowd gathered around a new piece of industrial machinery, perhaps a steam-powered loom being demonstrated in a public square. The crowd marvels at its precision, its power, its flawless repetition. It can produce more cloth in an hour than a dozen weavers could in a day. It is perfect. It does not tire. It has no flaws. But Kierkegaard and a man like Andersen standing in that same crowd would see something else. They would see the weaver who has lost his livelihood. They would see the way the machine reduces a human craft full of imperfection and individual character into a soulless, mechanical process. They would see the cold logic of efficiency triumphing over the warm messiness of humanity. Kay, with his magnifying glass, has become a proponent of this new religion of perfection. He has lost the ability to love the imperfect. The final stage of his abduction is at hand. One day, Kay goes out to the great town square to play with his sled. He defiantly hits his little sled to a large, magnificent white sleigh that sweeps into the square. The driver of the sleigh is cloaked and capped in white fur. It is, of course, the Snow Queen. She drives him faster and faster out of the town square, through the city gates, and into the open country. Kay tries to unhitch his sled, but he cannot. He tries to say the Lord's Prayer, but he cannot. The only thing he can remember is his multiplication tables. Think about that detail. The spiritual, the emotional, the human. It's all gone. All that remains in his mind is cold, hard calculation. The Snow Queen finally stops. She reveals herself to him. She is terrifyingly beautiful. He is not afraid. The shard in his eye has blinded him to her danger, and the ice in his heart makes him immune to the cold. She speaks to him. "You are cold," she says. "Creep into my bearskin coat." She takes him into her sleigh and wraps him in her furs. He feels as if he is sinking into a snowdrift. Then she kisses him. Her kiss, Andersen writes, was colder than ice. It went straight to his heart, which was already half a lump of ice. He felt as if he were about to die, but it is only for a moment. He feels no cold after that. He forgets everything. He forgets Gerda. He forgets his grandmother. He forgets his home. The Snow Queen gives him a second kiss. This kiss makes him forget all memory of his past life. He is now hers completely. He is a blank slate. She tells him she will not give him a third kiss, for then, she says, I should kiss you to death. This is not a rescue. It is a soul murder. The Snow Queen is not an evil stepmother or a jealous rival. She is a psychopomp, a collector of souls. She is a beautiful, seductive personification of death, not the comforting angel of death, but a cold, nihilistic death that offers oblivion. Andersen was obsessed with death. His father died when he was young, likely from complications of alcoholism and syphilis. He lived through cholera epidemics that could wipe out entire neighbourhoods in a matter of weeks. He saw the bodies of the poor carted away for burial in mass graves. The Snow Queen's kiss is the kiss of the mortician. It is the final chill that settles into a body. It erases memory, identity, and love, leaving only a frozen shell. Kay looks at her. He finds her perfect. She is the ultimate snowflake, beautiful, flawless, and utterly devoid of warmth. In his corrupted state, she is the only thing he can admire. They fly away, over forests and lakes, over lands where the winter is eternal. They fly to her palace, and on the ground, back in the city, no one knows where Kay has gone. They search for him. They ask the river if it has taken him. The official verdict is that he has drowned. Only Gerda refuses to believe it, and this is where the true story begins. It is not Kay's story. It is not the Snow Queen's story. It is Gerda's. This is perhaps the most radical departure from the Disney version. In Frozen, Anna is a princess. She is quirky and brave, but she is also naive and privileged. She has resources. She has a handsome guide, a magical troll family, and a comic relief snowman to help her. Her journey is a road trip. Gerda is none of these things. She is a poor, powerless little girl. She has no resources, no allies, and no map. Her journey is not an adventure, it is a pilgrimage, a brutal, terrifying odyssey through a world that is, at best, indifferent to her suffering and, at worst, actively hostile. We must now isolate the stages of Gerda's journey, for each one is a carefully constructed allegory for a different kind of societal or psychological trap. When spring comes, Gerda cannot bear the grief any longer. One morning, she puts on her little red shoes, her most prized possession, and creeps out of the house. She goes down to the river where they say Kay drowned. "Is it true you have taken my little playmate?" she asks the river. "I will give you my red shoes if you will give him back to me." She takes off her shoes and throws them into a little boat tied to the reeds. The boat, unmoored by her action, begins to drift away with her shoes in it. Thinking she has made a mistake, she jumps into the boat to retrieve them. But the current catches the boat and carries it away, down the river, away from her home, away from everything she has ever known. This is her departure. It is not a choice made with confidence. It is a frantic, accidental plunge into the unknown. Her offering of the red shoes is significant. In folklore, red shoes are often associated with life, passion, and vitality. Gerda is offering her own life force in a desperate bargain with the forces of nature. It is a pagan act in a Christian story, a hint of the deep, ancient magic that underpins the world. The river carries her far away into a beautiful, sun-drenched landscape. The boat drifts to the bank of a garden full of cherry trees. In the garden is a little house with red and blue windows and a thatched roof. An old woman comes out, leaning on a crooked staff. She is wearing a large sun hat, painted with the most beautiful flowers. This is the first major stop on Gerda's journey, the garden of the woman who knew magic. On the surface, this seems like a place of refuge. The old woman is kind. She brings Gerda inside, gives her cherries to eat, and combs her hair with a golden comb. But this place is a trap. It is a lotus eater's island, a place of deceptive comfort designed to make you forget your purpose. As the old woman combs Gerda's hair, Gerda begins to forget Kay. She forgets her grandmother. She forgets why she is there. The combing is a spell, an act of gentle, insidious brainwashing. The old woman wants a little girl to keep her company. She does not want Gerda to ever think of leaving, so she goes out into her garden, where it is perpetually summer, and all the flowers of every season bloom at once. She takes her crooked staff and taps each of the rose bushes, and every single one of them sinks into the black earth, disappearing without a trace. She does this because she knows that the sight of roses will remind Gerda of the rooftop garden she shared with Kay. She is deliberately, systematically erasing every possible trigger for Gerda's memory. This is not kindness. It is a selfish, possessive act of psychological imprisonment. Let's connect this to the historical world. What does this magical garden represent? Think of the Biedermeier ideal of the home. The home was supposed to be a perfect, self-contained world, a garden of domestic bliss that shut out the ugliness of reality. But this ideal could also be a prison, especially for women. It was a world of enforced innocence, of forgetting the troubles of the world, of focusing only on the beautiful and the pleasant. The old woman's garden is a sinister parody of this ideal. It is a place of eternal, unchanging summer, a place where memory and grief are forbidden. It is a comfortable cage. Consider also the rise of opium use in the 19th century. Laudanum, a tincture of opium, was a common household remedy, used for everything from calming fussy babies to treating female hysteria. It was a socially acceptable way to numb oneself to pain and sorrow, to retreat into a pleasant, dreamlike state. The old woman's garden is an opium dream, a place where you can eat the sweet fruit and forget your pain, but at the cost of your mission, your identity, your love. Gerda stays there for days, weeks. She plays among the flowers, happy and forgetful. But one day, she happens to look at the old woman's sun hat. And among the painted flowers on the hat, she sees a painted rose. The trigger. The memory comes flooding back. "What?" she says. "Are there no roses in the garden?" She runs out and searches, but they are all gone. She sits down and weeps, and where her hot tears fall on the ground, a rose bush springs up in full bloom, exactly as it had been before it sank into the earth. Gerda's grief is the antidote to the spell, her pain, her memory, her love. These are the things that break the magic of forgetting. She hugs the rose bush and is flooded with memories of her own roses and of Kay. She asks the roses, "Do you know where he is? Is he dead?" "He is not dead," the roses say. "We have been down in the earth where all the dead are, but he was not among them." This is the first piece of real hope she has. She then asks the other flowers. She goes to a tiger lily, a convolvulus, a snowdrop. Each flower tells her a story, a dream, a fragment of a vision. But none of them are about Kay. They are self-absorbed, telling stories of their own little worlds. They are beautiful, but useless. They represent the solipsism of a life lived only for pleasant sensations. Gerda realises this place cannot help her. She lifts the latch on the garden gate and runs out into the wide world, and she gets a shock. When she entered the garden, it was summer. Now, as she runs away, it is late autumn. The world is cold and grey. A huge amount of time has passed. She has wasted precious time in a comfortable prison. Her feet are bare and sore. She is alone. The world is bleak, but she runs on. This is a powerful lesson. The first great obstacle on the path to rescuing a loved one is not a monster or a villain. It is the temptation of comfort, the temptation to stop striving, to forget the pain and to settle for a pleasant numbness. Gerda has overcome it, but her trials are just beginning. She runs until she can run no more. She sits down in the snow, and a large crow hops up to her. This is the second stage of her journey, the world of intellect and society, represented by the crow. the prince and the princess. The crow is a tame crow. He speaks to her. He is a creature of society, a bit of a snob, very concerned with propriety. He listens to her story and thinks he might have a lead. He tells her that a new prince has just come to the kingdom, and this prince has married a princess who is terribly clever. She had read all the newspapers in the world and forgotten them again. She was that clever. She announced that she would marry any man who could speak well for himself, not just someone who looked important. Suitors came in droves, but they were all intimidated by her intelligence and the grandeur of the court. But one young man, a poor boy, came along who was not intimidated. He was witty and charming, and he spoke as well as the princess. They fell in love and were married, and the crow thinks this clever young prince might be Kay. He had arrived alone, in simple clothes, just as Kay might have. This seems promising, but look at the subtext. This is a story about social climbing through intellect. The princess is not valued for her goodness, but for her cleverness. The prince is not valued for his character, but for his wit. This is Anderson commenting on the world of the salons and the courts that he had so desperately wanted to join. A world where cleverness was a currency, where a sharp tongue could win you a princess. He is also subtly continuing the theme of the cold heart. The princess's defining trait is that she has read everything and forgotten it. Her knowledge is vast, but it is not integrated. It is a collection of data, not wisdom. It is another form of the flawless snowflake. The crow agrees to help Gerda sneak into the palace to see if the prince is Kay. His fiancée, a she-crow, has a position at court and can get them in through a back door. They sneak in at night. The palace is grand and imposing. They creep through the halls, up the grand staircase. Gerda's heart is pounding with hope and fear. They finally reach the royal bedchamber. The crow peeks in. The prince and princess are asleep. Gerda creeps closer. She holds up her lamp. She sees the prince's neck, and it is not Kay. Her hope is utterly crushed. She lets out a little cry. The prince and princess wake up. They are not angry. They are kind. They listen to her story. They are moved by her loyalty and her courage. They represent the best of the civilized world. They are intelligent, compassionate, and generous. They give Gerda new clothes, warm boots, a muff, and a magnificent golden coach to help her on her journey. They are good people, but they are part of a system. They are insulated by their wealth and their status. They can offer charity, but they cannot truly understand the brutal world that Gerda must travel through. The golden coach is a perfect symbol of this. It is a wonderful gift, a piece of their gilded world. But in the wilderness, in the lawless places Gerda is heading, a golden coach is not a help, it is a target. And so Gerda leaves the palace, dressed like a little lady, riding in a golden coach, with a postilion and footman. She is leaving the realm of civilized society, and she is about to enter the third and most terrifying stage of her journey, the world of the robbers. The coach drives into a dark forest. The gold glitters in the gloom, and it attracts attention. Robbers see it. "Gold! Gold!" they cry. They attack the coach. They kill the postilion, the coachman, and the footman. They drag little Gerda out of the coach. She is terrified, screaming. An old robber woman with a long, bristly beard and eyebrows that hang down over her eyes is about to kill her with a long, gleaming knife. But her daughter, the little robber girl, bites her on the ear and stops her. The little robber girl is one of Anderson's most brilliant and disturbing creations. She is a child raised in utter brutality, a product of her violent environment. She is about Gerda's age, but she is wild, insolent, and cruel. Her eyes are black and full of a strange sorrow. "She's not to be killed," the robber girl screams. "She's going to be my playmate. She's going to give me her muff and her pretty dress, and she's going to sleep with me in my bed." And she drags Gerda away, deeper into the robber's den. This is the absolute antithesis of the princess's palace. The robber's castle is a ruin, full of smoke and grime. Ravens and crows fly out of the holes in the walls. Great bulldogs leap around a fire where deer are roasting on a spit. The little robber girl has a menagerie of captive animals, 100 pigeons and a reindeer, all tied up. She and Gerda lie down to sleep on a bed of straw. The robber girl pulls out a sharp knife. "Do you sleep with a knife?" asks Gerda. "I always sleep with my knife," says the robber girl. "You never know what might happen." This is the reality for a huge portion of the population in Andersen's time, the underclass, the criminals, the people for whom violence was not an aberration, but the norm. There were no social safety nets. Poverty was a death sentence. For many, crime was the only way to survive. The forests outside the cities were home to bandits, deserters, and desperate people. The little robber girl is a child who has never known safety, kindness, or gentleness. Her only way of expressing affection or connection is through possession and threats of violence. She forces Gerda to tell her story, and as Gerda speaks of Kay and the Snow Queen, the captive pigeons coo above them. "We have seen him," they whisper. "We saw the Snow Queen's sleigh. It carried a little boy. It flew towards Lapland." The captive reindeer also speaks. "I am from Lapland," he says. "That is where the Snow Queen has her summer palace. It is a land of ice and snow." Here, in the heart of darkness, in this den of violence and despair, Gerda finds the crucial information she needs. This is a profound statement. The civilized world of the prince and princess, for all its kindness, could not help her. Their knowledge, derived from newspapers, was useless. True knowledge, the knowledge of the wild places and the hidden things, comes from the outcasts, the victims, the captive animals who see things from a different perspective. The little robber girl is moved by Gerda's story. Beneath her brutal exterior, there is a flicker of empathy. She sees in Gerda a reflection of her own captivity. She makes a decision. The next morning, she tells Gerda, "I'm going to help you." She unties the reindeer. She gives Gerda back her warm boots, but keeps the muff. She gives her 2 loaves of bread and a ham. "Now run," she says to the reindeer. "Take good care of the little girl." She lifts Gerda onto the reindeer's back and opens the gate. As Gerda leaves, the robber girl's mother and the other robbers are drinking and singing. Gerda is terrified they will stop her, but the little robber girl leans out and calls, "She's got her boots, and I kept her muff. It's so pretty. Don't you kill her." It's a bizarre, touching, and deeply sad moment. The robber girl's act of kindness is framed in the language of her violent world. She can only justify her compassion by asserting her own selfish gain. "I kept her muff." She is a damaged soul, performing a selfless act in the only way she knows how. She is the dark mirror of Gerda. What Gerda would be if she had been born into violence instead of love. Gerda and the reindeer race away, north, towards Lapland. This section of the story is a brutal refutation of the romantic idea of the noble savage. The robbers are not romantic rebels. They are damaged, dangerous people. Their world is not free. It is a prison of violence. Andersen is showing his readers the real cost of poverty and social collapse. He is rubbing their noses in the ugliness that their comfortable Biedermeier homes were designed to ignore. Imagine being a wealthy Copenhagen merchant in 1844, reading this story to your children by the fire. You have just read about the kind prince and princess, a world you understand. Now you are confronted with the robber girl, a child who sleeps with a knife, a child who expresses love by biting. This is not escapism. This is social commentary disguised as a fairy tale. Gerda's journey continues. She and the reindeer travel north into the frozen wastes. The landscape becomes more and more desolate. This is the fourth stage of her journey, the realm of ancient wisdom. They arrive first at the hut of a Lapp woman. She is a poor, simple woman living in a smoky hovel. She reads a message written on a dried codfish that the reindeer has brought. She gives them shelter and tells them they must go further to the home of a Finn woman who is even wiser. The reindeer is worried. "Can't you give the little girl a potion?" he asks the Finn woman. "That will give her the strength of 12 men." The Finn woman's answer is the philosophical core of the entire story. She looks at the reindeer and smiles. The strength of 12 men? That would be of little use. She takes a roll of parchment and reads from it. Then she says this: "I can give her no greater power than she has already. Don't you see how great it is? Don't you see how men and animals are forced to serve her? How she has come so far in the world on her own bare feet? Her power is in her heart. It comes from her being a sweet and innocent child. If she herself cannot get to the Snow Queen and remove the splinter from Kay's heart, then we can do nothing to help her." This is a radical statement. In most fairy tales, the hero is given a magical sword, a cloak of invisibility, a powerful spell. They are granted external power to overcome the obstacle. Anderson rejects this entirely. Gerda's power is not external, it is internal. It is her innocence, her love, her purity of heart. These are not passive, sentimental qualities. In this story, they are weapons. They are the most powerful force in the universe, stronger than any magic potion. The Finn woman is representing a kind of primal, earth-based wisdom, a pre-Christian shamanistic understanding of the world. She recognises that the fight against the Snow Queen is not a battle of strength, but a battle of spiritual integrity. She tells Gerda that the Snow Queen's gardens begin just 2 miles from her hut. Gerda must go on alone. The reindeer can't go with her. She puts Gerda down in the snow, gives her a final kiss, and the reindeer runs back. Gerda is alone, barefoot, in the middle of a blizzard, at the edge of the Snow Queen's domain. This is the final confrontation, and the enemy appears. The Snow Queen's army is not made of soldiers, it is made of snowflakes. But these are not ordinary snowflakes. They take on monstrous shapes. Some look like great, ugly porcupines, others like knots of snakes with writhing heads, others like fat little bears with bristling hair. They are living, malevolent things. They are the outposts of the Snow Queen's power. Gerda is terrified. She is freezing. She begins to say the Lord's Prayer. And as she prays, her breath freezes in the cold air, and her frozen breath takes shape. It turns into an army of little angels. They wear helmets and carry shields and lances. They grow larger and larger as more prayers leave her lips. They fight the monstrous snowflakes. They plunge their lances into the horrible shapes, and the monsters shatter into 100 pieces. Gerda's prayer has become a literal army. Her faith has manifested as a physical force. The angels warm her hands and feet. They protect her, and she is able to walk on unhurt into the very heart of the Snow Queen's palace. This is the climax of the Christian allegory. Gerda's journey has been a pilgrimage, a test of faith. She has passed through the temptation of worldly comfort, the garden, the distraction of worldly society, the palace, and the horror of worldly violence, the robber's den. She has relied on the wisdom of the humble and the wild, the crows, the reindeer, the Lapp and Finn women. And now, at the final threshold, her own innate goodness and simple faith are her only weapons, and they are enough. She enters the Snow Queen's palace. Now, we must examine this place, the Palace of Ice. Disney gives us a beautiful, shimmering castle of ice, created by Elsa in a moment of emotional release. It is a symbol of freedom and self-expression. It is a work of art. Andersen's vision is the exact opposite. The Snow Queen's palace is a place of absolute, soul-crushing emptiness. It is made of driven snow. The walls are snow. The windows and doors are cutting winds. There are over 100 halls, the largest of which stretches for many miles. They are all illuminated by the cold, stark light of the aurora borealis. It is vast, empty, and icily cold. There is no joy here, no laughter. Andersen writes, "Never was there any merrymaking, not even so much as a little bear's ball. In the centre of the largest, emptiest hall is a frozen lake. The ice is cracked into 1,000 pieces, but each piece is so perfectly formed that it looks like a work of art. In the middle of this lake sits the Snow Queen's throne. She calls it the Mirror of Reason. This is where she left Kay. He is blue, almost black with cold, but he does not feel it. The Snow Queen's kiss has made him immune. He is not a prisoner in chains. He is a prisoner of the mind. He is playing with flat, sharp-edged pieces of ice. He is arranging them into patterns, like a Chinese puzzle. He is trying to spell a word. The Snow Queen had given him a task before she left. She told him, "If you can spell this word for me, you shall be your own master, and I will give you the whole world and a new pair of skates." The word he is trying to spell is eternity. This is one of the most brilliant and chilling images in all of literature. Kay, with a splinter of the devil's mirror in his heart, is trying to understand the ultimate concept of divinity and existence, eternity, using only the tools of cold, fragmented, lifeless logic, the pieces of ice. He cannot do it. It is an impossible task. You cannot grasp the infinite and the divine through pure reason alone. You cannot construct faith out of frozen fragments. This is the ultimate state of the cold heart. It is a state of perpetual, sterile, intellectual activity that leads nowhere. It is a state of being trapped in a puzzle of your own making, in a palace of pure reason, cut off from all warmth, all love, all life. This is hell, not a pit of fire, but a palace of ice, a state of eternal, lonely, meaningless thought. Let's connect this to Andersen's own life. He was a man of deep but troubled faith. He was plagued by doubts. He was terrified of damnation. He saw the rise of science and rationalism as a profound threat to the religious worldview. Kay's puzzle is Andersen's own spiritual crisis, writ large. The fear that if you analyse your faith too much, if you subject it to the cold, cutting winds of pure logic, it will shatter into a million meaningless pieces. Into this frozen hell walks Gerda. She sees Kay. She recognises him. She runs to him and throws her arms around his neck. "Kay, dear little Kay, I have found you at last." But he sits quite still, stiff and cold. He does not respond. He is lost in his ice puzzle. And Gerda weeps. Her hot tears fall upon his chest. They penetrate to his heart. They melt the lump of ice. They dissolve the tiny splinter of the devil's mirror. Kay bursts into tears himself. And as he cries, the shard of glass in his eye is washed out. He looks at Gerda. "Gerda, dear little Gerda, where have you been so long, and where have I been?" He looks around at the vast, empty, icy halls and shudders. He clings to Gerda, and the healing is complete. The resolution is not a sword fight. It is not a battle of magic. It is an act of pure, unconditional love, an act of profound emotional empathy. Gerda's warm tears, the physical manifestation of her love, are the only force in the universe powerful enough to melt the ice of cold reason and expel the splinter of demonic cynicism. Love is the solvent for evil. That is the core message. As Kay and Gerda rejoice, the pieces of the ice puzzle, which had so tormented Kay, suddenly dance about and arrange themselves. They spell the word the Snow Queen had demanded: eternity. The puzzle solves itself, not through intellect, but through the reintroduction of love and grace into the equation. Once Kay's heart is healed, the intellectual problem becomes meaningless. They are free. They walk out of the Palace of Ice, hand in hand. The reindeer is waiting for them. So are the Finn and Lap women. They have food and warm clothes. Their journey home is a reversal of Gerda's journey out. It is a journey from desolation back to life. They meet the little robber girl, who is travelling the world. She tells them the crow has died, but that she is doing well. It's a bittersweet, realistic reunion. Not everyone gets a perfectly happy ending. Finally, they reach their home city. They walk up the stairs to their attic rooms. Everything is just as they left it. The clock says, tick-tock. But as they sit down on their little stools, they realise something has changed. They are no longer children. They are grown up. The final lines of the story are beautiful and haunting. They sat there, both grown up, and yet children at heart. And it was summer, warm, glorious summer. They have survived. They have come through the fire, or rather, the ice. They have faced the ultimate evil and the ultimate despair, and they have won. But they are not unchanged. They have lost their childhood. They have been aged by their trauma. They are adults now who carry the memory of that frozen palace within them. So, let us synthesize. Let us connect the dots. The Snow Queen is not a simple story of good versus evil. It is a complex allegory about the human condition as seen through the eyes of a deeply sensitive, traumatized, and spiritually intense man in the mid-19th century. The Devil's Mirror is a symbol of a cynical, hypercritical worldview that poisons perception. It is the spirit of an age that was beginning to value scientific detachment over empathetic connection. Kay's infection is a story of psychological trauma. It represents the loss of childhood innocence, the onset of depression, the seduction of intellectual pride, and the way trauma can freeze our emotional core. The Snow Queen is a multifaceted symbol. She is a demonic agent, a collector of souls. She is the personification of a cold, indifferent, and beautiful death. Then she is the embodiment of unattainable perfection that leads to nihilism. Gerda's journey is a map for surviving in a traumatic world. It is a warning against the dangers of comfortable escapism, the garden, the limitations of civilized society, the palace, and the brutal reality of violence and poverty, the robber's den. Her success is a testament to the power of things the rational world devalues: childlike faith, unconditional love, emotional vulnerability, and sheer stubborn persistence. The resolution is a theological argument. It posits that the poison of cynicism and the ice of pure reason can only be defeated by the warmth of human love, which is a reflection of divine grace. Why did Anderson encode all of this in a fairy tale? For several reasons. First, to avoid censorship. A direct critique of the rationalist movement or a raw depiction of lower-class life might have been deemed unsuitable or subversive. The fairy tale form gave him cover. Second, for personal catharsis. Anderson was pouring his own anxieties into this story, his fear of being unloved, his terror of losing his faith, his traumatic memories of poverty, his unrequited passions that felt as cold and distant as the Snow Queen herself. Many critics believe the Snow Queen was inspired by the opera singer Jenny Lind, a woman Anderson loved but who never returned his romantic feelings, seeing him only as a brother. Her coldness towards him became the elemental coldness of the Queen. Third, to create a story that works on multiple levels. For a child, it is an adventure story. For an adult, it is a profound meditation on life, death, faith, and the nature of evil. It is designed to grow with the reader. Now, we must turn to the final act of this narrative deconstruction, the sanitization. We must identify the agents of change. The primary agent, in this case, is the Walt Disney Company. For decades, Disney animators had tried and failed to adapt the Snow Queen. It was on a list of potential projects for Walt Disney himself in the 1930s. But they always ran into the same problem: the Snow Queen herself. She is too abstract, too symbolic, too purely evil to be a modern Disney protagonist. She has no clear motive, no backstory, no redeeming qualities. She is a force of nature, an avatar of death. You can't give a character like that a charming "I want" song. The project was shelved for decades. The breakthrough came when the story team made a radical decision, a decision that fundamentally broke the story, but created a commercial juggernaut. They asked, what if the Snow Queen and the hero were sisters? This single question marks the moment of sanitization, the moment the entire thematic and allegorical structure of Anderson's work was jettisoned. Let us perform a before and after analysis. The source of evil. In Anderson, the evil comes from the devil's mirror. It is an external, cosmic force that infects the world. In Frozen, the evil comes from Elsa's innate magic, which she cannot control. The problem is shifted from an external, metaphysical threat to an internal, psychological one. It becomes a story about managing anxiety, not fighting damnation. The victim. In Anderson, the victim is Kay, a boy. He is passive. He is abducted. The story is about the heroic efforts of someone else to save him. In Frozen, the victim and the villain are merged into one character, Elsa. The passive male victim is erased. The hero. In Anderson, the hero is Gerda, a poor, ordinary girl whose power is her loving heart and unwavering faith. In Frozen, the hero is Anna, a princess. Her primary power is not faith, but a plucky, optimistic personality. Gerda's agency and qualities are split between Anna, the relentless sister, and Kristoff, the guide through the wilderness. Gerda, the singular, powerful female protagonist, is erased and replaced by a princess who ultimately needs a man's help, the villain. In Anderson, the Snow Queen is an unambiguous, terrifying symbol of death and nihilism. In Frozen, she is transformed into Elsa, a misunderstood protagonist. The story is no longer about defeating evil, but about understanding and accepting a troubled individual. The villain is not the Snow Queen, but prejudice, fear, and a conveniently dastardly foreign prince. The central conflict in Anderson, the conflict is Gerda's quest to save Kay's soul from a demonic force. It is a battle for redemption. In Frozen, the conflict is Elsa's struggle with self-acceptance and Anna's desire to reconnect with her sister. It is a story of family therapy, the thematic core. Anderson's story is a Christian allegory about the power of love and faith to overcome cynicism and despair. Frozen's story is a secular, humanist tale about the importance of being true to yourself and the power of sisterly love. The profound spiritual dimension is completely stripped away. The disturbing elements, the robber's den, the child with a knife, the casual murder of the coachman, the psychological torment of the magic garden, the chilling emptiness of the ice palace, all of it is gone, replaced by friendly trolls, a goofy snowman, and a cosy trading post run by a man with a charming accent. What was Disney's motive for this radical surgery? It was not malicious, it was commercial, it was ideological. The commercial motive is obvious. A story about a demonic mirror and a child's soul death is not going to sell lunchboxes. A story about two beautiful princesses, a talking snowman, and catchy songs will create a multi-billion-dollar franchise. The ideological motive is more subtle but just as important. Modern, secular, Western culture is uncomfortable with the kind of story Anderson wrote. We are uncomfortable with absolute evil. We prefer our villains to be misunderstood, to have tragic backstories. We want to believe that everyone can be redeemed through therapy and self-acceptance. The idea of an external, malevolent force like the devil is seen as archaic, superstitious. We are uncomfortable with passive victims. We want our characters, especially our female characters, to have agency, to be proactive drivers of their own stories. A story where the central male character is a helpless victim and the female hero's primary weapon is her tears is seen as problematic by modern standards. We are uncomfortable with overt religious themes. A story that climaxes with an army of angels born from the Lord's Prayer is not going to play well with a global, multi-faith and no-faith audience. The message must be secularized, universalized. Love is kept, but it is stripped of its divine context and reframed as familial or romantic love. So Disney did what it always does. It took a complex, challenging, culturally specific story and turned it into a simple, reassuring, globally marketable product. They didn't adapt the Snow Queen. They strip-mined it for parts. They took the aesthetic, the ice, the snow, the queen, and threw away the soul. They took a story about the agonizing difficulty of remaining human in a cold, cruel world and turned it into a story about how wonderful it is to be a magical princess. The result is not a modernization, it is an erasure, it is a cultural lobotomy. And so we arrive at the final revelation. Frozen is not a fairy tale, it is an act of historical revisionism. It is a monument to our modern desire for comfort over truth, for therapy over theology, for self-acceptance over self-sacrifice. The story you have been sold is a lie, a beautiful, enchanting, and deeply misleading lie. The true story, Anderson's story, endures not because it is pleasant, but because it is honest. It endures because it acknowledges that evil is real and that it often comes in small, insidious packages. A splinter of glass, a cruel word, a cold thought. It endures because it tells us that the world is full of dangers far worse than monsters. The danger of comfortable apathy, the danger of a society that values cleverness over kindness, the danger of raw, brutal survivalism that strips us of our humanity. It endures because it gives us a hero for the real world, not a princess with magical powers, but an ordinary little girl with nothing but her own bare feet and a heart full of love, who walks through hell to save someone she has lost. Gerda is the hero we need, a hero who teaches us that true strength is not the power to build ice castles, but the power to weep, the power to feel pain for ourselves and for others, and to let that pain fuel a relentless, improbable, and ultimately triumphant quest for redemption. The story Disney sold you is about the power of letting go. The story Hans Christian Andersen wrote is about the agonizing, terrifying, and sacred duty of holding on. It is not a story about magic, it is a story about the miracle of remaining human in a world that is doing its best to freeze you solid.